Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to do things a little bit differently in this town hall because we want to be solution-oriented. So I want to give a little bit of direction ahead of time. I'm going to walk through our failures, rolling this out, and I'm going to say mine because I accept full responsibility for anything that did not go right initially with this rollout. So you need to know that up front. Number two, at the end, because we want to be solution-oriented, we've got several stations to help us get specific issues or concerns you feel you still have with any transportation at this current time. So with that in mind, when I'm done, we've got a table over here where Miss Bear and Miss Cable are right there. That'll be the table where I'm at. I will have a notepad. I'll be able to take specific issues that you may not have had a chance to speak to me about or to any of us. Make sure that I'm aware of that if it's more system-wide concerns. We've got transportation in the back there. Wave Kevin real quick. Autumn, Kevin, Don. If you want to find out if there's any specific concerns relating to your student's route, pickup, drop-offs that you feel like you may not have been able to relay to us at this point, or if you want updates on where they're at, that would be a perfect opportunity there. On this side, we've got folders with each school site listed. So you can turn those forms in if you fill one out tonight. You can be specific to any drop-off or pickups related to your school's site or your school's community. So that's specific to more of the school's community or school site concerns or issues. So with that, I would like to lead in by saying I did have a chance to look into what's led us to where we're at currently now. And I want to walk through a timeline with you. Please do not take anything I'm saying as an excuse. It's reality. It's fact. We need to identify it first. We need to figure out what happened, why it happened, and what we're doing moving forward to fix it. And I don't think anybody in the room would argue with that. I want to acknowledge the fact that if I was a parent sitting in this room and dealt with some of the frustrations and the lack of communication you faced this week, I would have behaved far more aggressively than many of you did in this room. So I am not excluding myself as a parent from what you're feeling and what you've dealt with, some of you, in working through these transportation issues. As you've seen, transportation within schools is a big issue nationwide. It's not just here, it's not just in Tennessee. We have to start making improvements to how we run routes, how we here since I've been here, is that we didn't always have the data we needed at our fingertips, and we had to look for things. We had to dig into things because our drivers are experts. They do what they need to do to get our kids to school safely no matter what. And those of you that have lived here and experienced our drivers know that. They drive roads that several of us probably in this room wouldn't attempt with a pickup truck and trailer, and they're hauling a 40-plus foot bus with kids sitting behind them. Not always the quietest, not always the most well-behaved, and they're tackling those roads each and every day. We knew we had to do something. About 3 years ago, we started to collect data on what that would potentially look like. We started getting with our bus drivers. We started to get student information, drop-off points, pick-up points, areas of the county we needed to be concerned about, and we started to collect this data with an effort to do what we did this year. That data was collected over the last 3 years, such as road names, current stops, addresses, student names, and we provided that to our routing software company that we contracted with this last summer. The student rollover was delayed, which was the first red flag, but we felt like we could still continue moving forward because it wasn't a huge delay. We started that process of submitting that in the late spring, early summer. All of our student data was shared confidentially with those routing folks, and they started to enter it into that routing software. We were later notified, and this is, when I say later, this is Monday morning. We were later notified that a third of those, even though we submitted full packets, a third of those students identified did not get to the target. We conducted meetings with drivers the last week of July where we handed out those routes. But even at that point, we weren't aware that a third of the students that had either come into the district or moving around from within the district had not been included in that data. Drivers were given those lists and they provided us excellent input immediately on what they felt may not work, what did work, and then we spent a couple of days or 3 days before the school year started actually working with drivers to get those changes just based off the schedules they were provided. We started making those changes and tweaks based on their input, which is invaluable. They know the routes, they know the stops, they know the addresses, they know our students. Last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday were those days that we finalized or attempted to finalize the information we had. And again, at that point, the routing software said, yes, we got all your data. We knew we had sent it all, but we still didn't know at that point up to a third was missing. We got all of our student officers back from routing, sent them to the school sites. This was a little bit behind our schedule, but we did get that out. The problem is that that's over a 900-page document. So then we had to go through and separate that out, and the school sites did get those. At that point, the school sites started to realize that they were missing information, and that was the first red flag, and that was Sunday. We reminded site admin, the central office team, and our site employees leading up to this change, and again on Friday before school, that we would likely need patience as we implemented this new system, but ultimately we felt that it was absolutely necessary because of the number of vacancies we were facing and the condensing of the routes that the software and the company working with us were promising. And I'll get to where we're at now, but that is starting to come to some bit of fruition at this point. Monday morning, as I was driving to work, I had a conversation with Mr. Kevin back there, and I was informed that route information had not gone through to parents and was incomplete to the school sites. And I'll get to what we have found out this week as to why that perhaps happened. Our sites expressed caution as they started to receive calls and noticed that not all students were assigned routes or bus numbers. That is a nightmare. In some cases, none of that communication went through, that was sent through over the summer, none of that reached its target audience, namely you, namely our school sites. None of it went through. And again, we've identified some of the reasons why, and we've got the plan moving forward, but that doesn't take away the angst or frustration you felt this week. Unfortunately, looking back, I didn't allow for alternative forms of communication with this rollout. It was pushed out. We were assuming that it was reaching its target audiences, and we moved forward. That was a mistake. However, just like everything in life, some of our mistakes are our best teaching moments, and we are beginning to learn from this and become better because of it. So that's part of what I want to talk to you about this afternoon in the second section. Talk about what we're doing now. Before we start with that section, though, I want to thank the board for coming. Many of them are sitting over at the side here. I want to thank our bus drivers, many of them who are in the room this afternoon, staff members as well as parents. It's not easy to stand up here, but it's not easy making these mistakes, and we need to talk through, and you need to know where we're at and what we're doing to improve, because if we don't have a plan for improvement, you're going to lose faith in us real quick. So that's why we're here this evening. Let's start with a little bit of good news. Good news is that we're a week now into this process as of the end of the day today, and changes for the better have occurred. sure that they're somewhat equalized. We still have vacancies. That's why we have several late pickup and drop-off issues still at the end of this first week. But even those have somewhat improved. Most of them have improved. But we still have a lot of improvement left, and I'll talk about vacancies here in a second. One of the things that we're looking at now is, and it's very important, you'll see the half sheets of paper. I spoke to a lot of folks coming in, that we need to make sure that we have current information for you, because as we add drivers, we need to get that information out, and we need to make sure that we have the preferred information, the preferred way to contact you, and your current information, whether it's phone number, email, what have you. A lot of you prefer text, and that's fine, but we need to know the best way to contact you. Once all student data is completed, and we have roughly 75–80%, I think, completed to the point where we have everything that's flagged in our system complete for those students. This link, we will release a parent link, and I'll show you on the screen. If you wouldn't mind going through that. I wanted to back up just a little bit and show you what we were working with before we started routing. So let me back up before I get into the plan. So if you see here, this is a blown up section of Church Hill. And what you see there is some crossover routes for just one route. If you look at what we were looking at prior to this routing, and nearly 80 routes on the right-hand side of your screen, and I know it's small, but we can leave this up when we're done, and you come up forward, you can see it. You'll see that many routes were crossing over one another. And one of the biggest complaints I got last year, the year before, and the prior year was that I just saw a bus drive by my house, why can't they grab my students? This is why right here. You'll see routes that are color-coded, and what we had the company do is route our current routes before starting to make changes to show us the efficiency potential in switching over. If you wouldn't mind advancing. This is how it's updated. So now there are clean lines between the different portions of the county. Let me stand over here at the side and point here. So you'll see a yellow area, a light blue area, kind of a purple blue area, a red area, a green area, and a purple area there, and then a blow up of what the purple area looks like. Instead of those crossover areas, there's separations between and clear lines. What this allows us to do for the first time in history is, if we have a driver out, which we do periodically, is we have the ability to print that route, to get it to one of our sub-drivers or another pair of drivers that may split that route while that driver's out. And it's a listing of those exact stops, times you're supposed to be there, so on and so forth down the list. So this is why we wanted to head in this direction and why we felt the need to do so. We had 15 routes at the start of this year if we would have kept things the same. 15 routes that were not covered. Last year at this same time we had between 8 and 9. So we were starting out very, very much behind the 8 ball if we were to keep the same system in place that we had for years and years. We had to make a change. If you could advance one screen. The system information that we're collecting will provide us a student's first and last name, a home address, a phone number for the parent, a parent name, first and last name, and the ability to know exactly where that student's at during the course of a route. If we have an accident and we know that they're about 20 minutes in, we know exactly where they're supposed to be based on the routing software and the times that are provided for each stop. If we have a parent calling and saying, my student hasn't shown up, First of all, this part doesn't change, but we make a phone call to that driver, find out if that student's on the bus, and if they are, we can give them real-time information on where that bus is. We have not been able to do that in the past. Advance one more. This is what you're going to see as parents eventually. Once we get all the information in, once we get the routes assigned, and once we hire the vacancies we still have, which we're down to 5 as of today. I signed off one more this evening before coming over here. You're going to see exactly what your route looks like and get all information of your driver's information and the number of stops they're making and where those stops are. If you have something happen as an emergency in your home, if you have something happen with a family member and you need to perhaps go and meet the bus somewhere, you know exactly where they're going. And that's yet another safety feature of the software. There were 4 main goals in switching to the software, and this is what I talked to the board about last spring late. Safety, accounting for each and every student on all buses running through the county. Efficiency, we had buses, 72 passenger buses, 60 passenger buses that were half full, a third full. We now have equalized numbers. We're getting there. We do have some very full routes still, but we did, like I said, hire somebody this evening, and we're moving drivers to different locations as we speak. Transparency. We had drivers because they had needs to meet in different locations and transfer students. Those were out of necessities in the years past, but that wasn't always the safest thing because the central office or the bus shop in some cases didn't know that those things were happening. With this, if they feel that need to do that, which we trust our drivers to tell us, hey, this is the safest thing to do, this is what we need to do, they have the ability to call the bus shop and make that happen so we can enter it into the system and have record of it. These folks are transferring at such and such school site. These students are going here, these students are going there, and we're able to document that and make safe decisions and document where those students are. And like I said earlier, dealing with absences. Up to this point, when a driver was out, if we didn't have a driver that was familiar with that driver's area, often, and I'm preaching to the choir here, you guys have seen it, often we were unable to fill those. Those students weren't taken to school unless they had a carpool situation or a family member that could take them, because we didn't have somebody that we could put on that route, because we didn't have a very real picture, clear picture of what that route entailed at all times. Moving forward, if I could pinpoint the phone calls I got, those of you that I spoke to personally, I know several of you are in the room here. First of all, thanks for reaching out directly. It helps us when we know what your exact issue is, and more importantly, what a potential solution is. Many of you called and said, hey, I'm ticked off. This happened, but I think we could avoid it if. That helps us tremendously, especially with the new rollout. And I want to thank you for those that did that, for those that I had the chance to talk to, because that's productive. That helps us out. I don't have all the answers. Our team doesn't have all the answers, but it does greatly help. And there's going to be some things that you suggest that we can implement right away. There's going to be things that we may not be able to, but that helps us out. In the future, communication, back to communication. Moving forward, we cannot rely on one tool for communicating with you, with our school sites, with our principals, with our staff, and with our drivers. So one thing we're implementing is each district employee will be assigned to a communication group. So let's say we're pushing a message out to Route 13. Evan will run a test phone call, a test message. And if the employee assigned to that gets it, we know that it's at least reaching some, or if not all, of the audience members. In addition to that, we're not going to rely on one way of communicating. We're going to do more phone calls. We're going to do more site-based communication. The central office is going to be at every site this year during PTA, PTOs, parent nights, different opportunities. If you have suggestions, if you want to provide us input, if you have a concern, we will be at those opportunities so that you can come to us directly. Another way of doing that. And we're going to be more active on our own social media and on our own website. With those tools in mind, that still doesn't cover 100%. We need your help. If you have a question, chances are there's probably 6 or 7 other families that have the same type of question, and it helps out to voice that stuff. Bring it forward. One of the more exciting, I think, creative ideas came from a parent I spoke to yesterday, and it is a test driver run going into next school year. This test driver run will occur several days before the school year even starts, the tail end of the summer. As soon as we can get routes assigned, make sure that we've included as many new students who have come in that we have record of at that point. And we're going to provide drivers those routes very, very early on. And I'm hoping to be about a week before school even starts. And what the plan will be is to give these drivers their routes, have them look them over like we did this year, but more advance notice. And then for them to get in their buses and actually go to every stop on there. We will publish it ahead of time. We will ask parents and their kids to be out at their stops to meet the driver, see the bus in real time, identify the number, get the driver's name, introduce the students to the driver, parents to the driver, talk about pickup times, talk about rules on the bus. 5-10 minute stop there at the side of the road, there where the stop is, to just help with communication and help with that ease of moving forward with riding our buses. Our drivers are hearing this for the first time, but it's a great idea, and I think every single driver in here would support that. It makes their job easier if they get a test run, right? Many of them hopped in their cars when we rolled it out last week, and they were driving if they had new stops on their routes, they were already driving. They were hopping in, they were going there that same day because that's who they are. But this will give them an opportunity to meet you all, talk about the stops, get a feel for everything that's involved in riding a bus. Number one, to summarize, due to my haste and desire to get this out to all of you and not have issues with the vacant routes we were facing, I lost sight of every single person in this room. I made assumptions that we were communicating adequately and appropriately. That was not the case. That's on me. I do humbly apologize, and I ask you for grace. I ask you for forgiveness as we move forward. But that's not enough. I promise that I will take the time to get more input from you in some of those venues I just talked about. And please take the opportunity to come up to me tonight and at the school sites that I was talking about. And give me that input. I'm a parent. I live here. This is what I see. This is concerning to me. That's the best way for us to make changes and move forward. Communication is two ways. I didn't uphold my end of the bargain by any stretch of the imagination leading into this week. But moving forward, I've talked a lot about what we're going to do as a staff and as a school system, but I do need your help in that. You need to let me know, let us know, no matter how sensitive, no matter how confidential you feel it needs to be, we need to know about those situations so we can help you. With my excitement about what we were potentially looking at and the ability to deal with such vacancies, I pushed this forward without making sure you guys were communicating good. I rushed the communication process without adequate testing to this end. You're going to see more of us. You're going to have more opportunities for face-to-face, just like I said earlier. Here's how you can help. Use that piece of paper that you probably got from school already. We brought extras this evening on the bleachers down here. But any changes, again, let us know if there's any changes. Even if you think, hey, they've already got them in the system, they've already accounted for them, I've already been getting phone calls. Any doubts, please fill them out. Number 2, I want to thank you for your patience. The folks I had a chance to talk to, whether it was tonight, over the phone, over the last several weeks, as we were dealing with just not this, but those that have called about other things, just a question, just to introduce themselves, have been very, very good to offer suggestions. Like I said earlier, and that's a big, big key. Please continue to do that. Don't feel like he doesn't have time, he doesn't care, he won't answer his phone. I guarantee I do. I've got several commissioners in here, employees in here that will attest to the fact that I do. If I miss you, I will call you back. I see a lot of you in the grocery stores. I see a lot of you in the local areas, and you're always good to come up and say, hey, you're doing a good job, but, or, you suck, here's how you can improve, and that's okay too. That's what I'm paid to do, and I don't mean to offend anybody if that's a bad word, and some of the families, I apologize. I was not allowed to say that as a kid, so I do apologize. I appreciate more than you know hearing from all of you when we have the opportunity to talk face to face. We've talked a lot about communication tonight. I'm a big fan of face to face. It has to happen. We rely on social media way too much. We rely on our cell phones and texting way too much. We rely on the internet and email way too much. But it is the most convenient. If that's your preference, you've got my word that that's how I'll communicate with you and my staff as well. Too often, as we've seen in the news dealing with national politics and other things, people can't talk anymore. People start yelling at one another, and I get it. There's anger, there's frustration. People start lashing out. But even if that's the start of how you and I talk in the future, I promise I'll be as patient as possible, and we will get to the point where we can talk things through. I promise that if you reach out to any of our staff, you'll see the same. I have a requirement of all of our supervisors to be in the schools up to 2 days a week. At least 2 days a week, sorry. Most of them are there many, many more days. The reason for that is to get a pulse of what's happening at our school sites and where we need to lend support. Our role at the central office is to be a support for our school sites, to be a support to you, and make sure our students have everything we have in the system to give them, to make sure they're prepared for the future. Number 3, while students and drivers are entering this final stage of assignments, we will continue to make tweaks. I've got good news this evening. There is a route being added to Mooresburg. Bus 92 was very full. The capacity of a bus is 3 kids per seat. That's not the most comfortable. It's not the most, it's not the best way to do it. If at all possible, while we're in the hiring process, we will thin those out, which also helps with pickup and drop-off times being better. We have set an internal goal of no earlier than 6:10 to 6:15 in the mornings. We still have some routes, as you all know, that are before 6 o'clock right now. But here's a tough decision we're making on a lot of these issues. We either decide to run full capacity buses or double up in some cases and still offer transportation, or start cutting routes off. And we don't want to cut routes off. That's the last ditch ever. With that being said, Churchill area between Churchill and up to Mount Carmel still has 5 vacant routes. We are doubling those up right now, with the exception of 2 that we are unable to because of distance, and that's the Carter's Valley area all the way out to near Virginia. I will tell you, right now we don't have a driver for it, but Kevin has some leads on some folks, and that may be in the next week and a half. We have some promising news there too. But where we can double up, we'd rather get the kids there a little later, even if it means a little bit earlier pickup for some, and have them at school, because what we deal with as a public school, just like others around us, is that if we don't offer transportation, the students can't get to school. That's a bare fact. That's the dire situation that we find ourselves in a lot. Our board has prioritized busing. The state of Tennessee, we're not obligated to offer busing. While I'm here, and I'm saying in front of the board, and they would agree, while I'm here, we will prioritize keeping busing and improving it as we go through. Yes, there are taxes for that, yeah. Yes, sir. If we ever did get rid of busing, that tax would go away too. But yes, and that's a state issue. The only vacancies we have right now are due to not being able to recruit drivers. I'll talk to you right afterwards, but that is a good question. So what I can tell you, my understanding of the law is, and again, I'll have to look it up, but my understanding of the law is we're to avoid backing up if at all possible, if there are other ways to. Yeah. But I'll talk to you afterwards. Yes, ma'am. I'm getting ready. While we have that in place, yes, sir, you're correct, and we're on the same page. Yeah. Yes, to answer the attendance issues, they will be excused until we can get this completely ironed out. Excused absences are different than verified absences. They are excused. They will not count against you. Well, ultimately, again, that's coming up against state law, but we will do what we can locally to help deal with that. Yes. Like I said earlier, we want to spend the evening making sure that you have specific concerns and questions addressed. That's going to be my table right back there where those three females are. You can see me if you have system-wide issues or concerns that you need to address with me. Again, transportation is back there if you want to check on a route, check on times, if you still feel uncertain about anything that you've been assigned. Back here are school site folders specific to your school site or community in those areas. And we will be here as long as we need to. But a lot of the situations in here are very specific to you and your child, and I want to make sure that we're giving adequate time to address those. Yes, ma'am.
Does Skyward play a role in this? I don't think so. Unless they have to re-verify everything.
So Skyward does play a role in this, and that's why we ask for verified information each year, just to make sure that everything we have on file is current for you. Contact information, address, phone numbers, emails, preferred method of communication, because what's going to happen is this system here is going to link with Skyward, and that's how the messages are going to be sent directly to you, whether it's a phone call, text message, email. that's going to be very, very important. That's why we're pushing these out one more time at least, probably several times during this first semester. There are changes. There are changes to some routes, but again, when the drivers bring those issues to us, especially if it's a safety concern with walking the area that's been designated on the route, drivers are letting us know so that we can adjust those, and some of those have been adjusted even within this first week with everything else going on. Those have been, some adjustments have been made. Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday, bus 35, I never received a phone call, email, nothing. None of us in the neighborhood knew that there was even a wreck until my neighbor down here and another had called me.
Good.
I haven't, even online, no phone call, no nothing.
That's good information to have. Make sure that you speak to them about that, and we can get you information on what we have moving forward in addressing that. Yes, ma'am.
But we arrived on the scene of the bus accident. The bus driver left the students and the bus and went all the way down to the bottom of the hill, shaking her head and holding her head. And there was children getting off, and I have pictures here to show you those children behind the bus, which was very dangerous for the accident. I thank God that the children was even here today.
Can you come see me at my table with that? Please, thank you. Yes, sir.
I just want to know which this goes to. My kid ain't had a bus ride yet. And
That's
last year, and I even called, was supposed to get called back, and never called back.
That's a great question for.
I worked in the federal government for 20 years, and I know the red tape is spin around. I'll get back with me.
Yeah. Do me a favor, make sure you make your way over there. Yes, sir.
My kids, why can they not catch the bus in the middle of the morning to get to the hospital?
Yes, that is.
We are working on transit. That's a great question. If I can get everybody's attention before we break for the groups here, and then we'll tackle individual issues as much as possible. But a question came up that I did want to talk about: transfers. We talked about transfers being worked out by drivers in the past. We do have the safest procedure possible is not to have a transfer. Students get on from point A and go to the end of the line on one bus, but we do have need for transfers. Transfers are being worked out now as we assign routes and see what those needs are. Because there has been a shifting in routes, there is a need to readdress some of the transfers and picking up students at Mooresburg, for example, that just need to get from Mooresburg to RMS or Cherokee. That's just an example. That's been worked out as of, I believe, this morning, and will be fully in swing by Monday. So we are starting to approve transfers, but we must have documentation on which students are transferring and which bus they're going from and to that takes them to school, and then vice versa on the way
What
back.
about getting off of the bus and in with the parents after this? That's what I do.
That's a transfer also, yes.
They're not allowed it. Like I've got a seventh grader at the Rockville Middle. And I've got a grader at here. I can't drop my high schooler off at the middle school for them to take the bus to go to Cherokee.
We haven't gone across the board yet with that because we had to make sure that we had adequate room on all the routes first. Yes, but they are working on this. If there is, then that's being worked on this. But do me a
But
favor,
it's not
guys.
been fixed, so I'm not talking
Come
to
like
the
it.
supervisor.
So they will be able to get off, or I can take my high schooler to the middle school and get on the bus and go to volunteer.
As long as we have record of that, then we can approve that, yes. All right, so any questions on which table? I'm going to be at this one here. School site specific issues, back at the back there, underneath the basketball goal. Transportation over at the side. Please come see us, but please, most importantly, make sure that any information we need, and there's a section at the bottom that I didn't mention for comments and suggestions. The last thing I want to say is a request. If you are interested in driving, don't laugh me out of the room. If you're interested in driving, please check the box and make sure you see me or transportation before you leave. We have.
What is the pay?
So, we're very competitive with our driver scales. When I first moved here and came in, we gave a pretty sizable to try to catch them up. We've given a raise every single year when we get to the 5 year. Right now, at the lowest end of the step, we're at roughly $75 a day, and then at the top step, $116 a day. And that's for hour and a half, up to an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon. The problem is it's a split shift job and it's very hard to fill. Unless you're retired, unless you've got another job that takes the middle of the day type shift, it's very hard to find people that want to do that, unfortunately. But we are doing our best. It's hard to deal with student behavior times too, just like it is teaching.
That's what the parents need to step in.
I hear you.
My issue is, I live on 113. I have 6 year olds, 9 year olds, and every year they've been picked up at 6:20. I had to be at work at 7 o'clock, and now I'm by 6:45, and I'm not leaving 6 year old, 9 year olds staying on side of the And so, I don't know, that's maybe
There are things that we can do to help that, and some of which I've talked about. Some is being able, when we add drivers, we can help split routes that are full. That allows routes to go earlier or later based upon the need of the area. But there are some things that we can't. But please see me. I'm going to get your information and look into that immediately. Yes. Yeah. Right now, that goes to that issue where we're doing the dual routes. So we need to make it when we have vacancies. We either make a decision to do a swing through and fill the bus, take those students and come back through, and that results in a very late drop off. Right now, we hired another driver this evening. We're down to 5 vacancies. We were at 6 earlier today. Next week, we have another driver testing, and if he passes, then we're down to 4. Every driver that we add takes those dual routes away and gets them to normal schedules. So it's a tough decision to make a decision to pick up earlier and drop off later, or not run a double route at all, and we don't want to get into that. Right now, it is an extended day, and I know that's not the best because these kids, some of them very young, are facing a 12-hour day at school between the time they're picked up and getting back, and that's not ideal at all. So, yes, sir. So that's a great suggestion. Either see me and I'll get your information and I'll relay it, or talk to transportation. And we will be very, very as efficient tonight as possible. If you don't have the time to wait in any of the lines, we will take your information anywhere. I've got additional staff in the audience. We can jump on the notebooks there. Find one of us. We'll be around. I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. I promise you it is heading to a better spot, and again, I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
Will there be somebody there that wants to do
They were late.
At the school
And
sites.
then, so I ended up.
They are mandated to be there as long as they have students. I will follow through on the
I got Tracy Butler and the message, so I was waiting for a call back. Never received it. I'm pretty sure that I'm reading this.
Oh, look at that line.
My sister gets my email.
They can be safe. I'm right. Most of these routes you're talking about, that's where we put routes.
Sorry.
That's what you get for talking.
I'm just a fly on the wall.
Right now, when it starts raining, snowing,
Excuse me.
so sorry.
That's all right. I was looking at this line. Alrighty, I guess we're going to go ahead and sign off. We can see that the parents are making their concerns known individually to district supervisors. The biggest line's over here. This is to speak to the transportation director is over here. That's the biggest line. So hopefully they're going to hear the concerns and make adjustments as needed. So we're going to go ahead and sign off now and start the weekend.